So it's been about 4 or 5 hours since I applied the wax to this chair. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to buff it. This is where I think most people get very confused, is the difference between buffing your piece and applying the wax and removing the excess. Removing the excess, you're really just, you're just wiping it off like you would wipe off a table. You're not pushing hard, you're not trying to remove as much of the wax as possible. You're just making sure it's flat. There's no ridges or streak marks from like brush strokes in it. You want it to be just a nice flat surface. Then when you buff it, you're actually creating small scratches in the wax to get a consistent shine, and then you're going to use a polishing pad. This one is synthetic wool, or you can use microfiber polishing pads that we talked about earlier to buff it up to a higher shine. Or if you like the look of like a really satin finish, almost somewhere between a matte and a satin finish, you can actually skip the polishing part and just do the still wool. But the still wool is what makes the shine consistently even. And this is really the key to what you want to be doing. So I don't know how well you can see this, but the wax is really uneven. If I were just to take this pad and try to shine it up or polish it, I would get this like weird streaks in it. It wouldn't look good. It looks splotchy. So the first step you're going to do before you do that everybody skips, is you're going to use still wool to polish it up. And you don't need a lot of it, so I'm just going to rip off a small portion of it. And you're going to rub it across the whole piece. And this is probably where you're going to spend the most amount of your time. And you want to work somewhere where you can really see the reflection of the light, because anywhere that you see that's really shiny, you're going to spend a little bit more time on till it gets to match the rest of the piece, if that makes sense. So I'm just taking this and I'm rubbing it across the whole thing. And right here, I'm sure you can't see it, but right here I have the spot that's extra shiny compared to the rest of this surface. So I'm going to scratch, or not scratch, but I'm going to use this to dull it down a little bit until it's even with the rest of the piece. And I put a little bit more pressure on when I get to those areas than I do everything else, so that it goes a little faster. You could spend hours using this to try to get these same results, and honestly, it will hurt your wrists. You'll hate it. You'll hate me. This goes so much faster because you're taking off any of the leftover excess wax so that you have a very consistent coat of wax on your piece. And then when you go to polish it up with your polishing pad, it comes out really nice and even. Okay, a few things I want to point out. You might come across some places that no matter what you do, they don't match. They might be a little bit flatter of a sheen than the rest of the piece. That usually means that you didn't get enough wax on in that area, so you want to reapply the wax, and then again let it wait a few hours before you go back and try to rebuff it again. And you might have a few places like that, but this is the great thing about wax, is that if you have a spot that you messed up on, you can just reapply it. So it's really convenient for furniture, because if you ever get a scuff mark on your painted furniture, you can very quickly fill that in with paint and then go back and re-wax that area, just that area, and get it to the exact same sheen, and it won't look obvious. It won't look like a touch-up. It will blend in seamlessly. That's a big reason I like to use wax, because you can easily touch up your furniture without hardly any work, and it will seamlessly fit in with the rest of the piece. But if you do come across a spot that seems like it's just, no matter what you do, not polishing up to the same sheen as the rest of the piece, then just apply another coat of wax there and let it dry again, and then go back. And this is really routine. This is easy. I'm not pushing hard. It's just like sanding. I'm just softly going over the surface, focusing on areas that aren't blending in right away until they get to that point where they look like they match. But one thing you do want to be careful with is this is similar to sanding. Some people use steel wool to sand. So don't push really hard on the corners. You want to be really careful, especially on a piece like this, not to put a lot of pressure on the corners, because you can sand all the way through the wax and then sand off your paint. I actually sometimes use this to distress if I want a really, really light distressing on my piece. I'll actually use the steel wool at this stage to do that. But if you don't want any of that, then make sure that you are being very careful around your edges. And as you go through this, steel wool gets everywhere, so you're going to have these little marks all over your chair or whatever you're working on that make it look really dirty, but you'll actually clean those off when you go to polish it, or if you're not polishing and you like the sheen that you're getting with just the steel wool, then you can just take a rag and wipe them off. But it will look messy. You can see how quickly I'm going through it. I'm already done with, this whole side. So I'm going to show you what we do with it once we get it consistent. So the shine is even, it looks good. You could really leave it at this point, but I want a little bit more shine. So I'm going to take my pad. I kind of like these because you can stick them on your hand and they just kind of stay. You can almost like grab with them. And I just take it, and I'm using a little bit more pressure than I was using with the steel wool, but I'm still not pushing really hard. And I'm just going over it kind of like how you would wipe off a table. This is really exactly what you would do if you had like a rag and you were trying to clean off your table. This is pretty much the same thing. If I notice areas when I go do this that look uneven, I'll take my steel wool back over them and just even it out a little bit. And again, it does not matter which way you go when you do this. You can go in circles, you can go straight, whatever's easiest for you. See, I've noticed that there's a little bit of a weird inconsistency right here. So, see, I can go in circles, straight across, it really doesn't matter. You just want to get it even, because you're not going to see those little scratches unless you take basically a microscope to it. You can see, like, if I see a little bit of a difference, sometimes I focus on that area even with the synthetic wool, because it still does buff it up a little bit, but it just takes so long to do it with this alone that half the time it doesn't work. You're just going to spend hours and hours doing this, and this really cuts your time down exponentially. So this is a huge part of waxing. Don't forget this step. I don't usually do this with white unless I'm working on a flat surface that I'm having issues with shine, but like on this piece, on the drawer fronts and things like that, it's not necessary to go through this much amount of work. I just put the wax on, wipe it off, and let it dry, because you're not going to see it on something like this. But on a black or a dark piece of furniture, you can see every single little thing that it shows all the flaws. So you want to be a little bit more careful and take the extra time on those pieces. I don't know how well you can see this, but the shine is perfectly even on all the parts I've gone over. And I think if you do this, you will be much happier with the way your furniture looks, especially if you're having problems with dark painted furniture. And that's it. You just want to let it cure. I usually, after I buff it, I'll let it cure at least another 24 hours. I've heard some people say that you should wait a week. I've never seen a big difference or noticed a big difference from a day to a week. But you just just want to let it cure before you really start to put it to hard use. But yeah, that's kind of up to you how long you want to wait on it. And yeah, I hope this helps. I hope it shared information